وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters and respected Sayyid. We gather again for Imam Hussain, and this time on the event of Arbaeen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ. And we did not send our messengers except that they talk the language of the people in order to explain and to provide them with guidance. We gather here on the significance of the event of Arbaeen. What does Arbaeen mean to us? In any religion, when we look, they have rituals, and rituals act as a symbol. Symbol means that if I have an abstract idea, I can bring it down to an objective, something concrete, something solid that I can remember. So Arbaeen gives us this notion that, this symbol that we need to reflect, we need to look back. That many days have passed from the sacrifice that happened on the plain of Karbala. And as a habit of, we are all human beings and we forget. So Arbaeen acts as a symbol in order to look back, to see what happened on the plain, in order not to forget. And when we look back, we see two things. We have two roles. As the famous Iranian sociologist Dr. Shariati said, we have two options. Those who went and struggled and fought, they were like Imam Hussain. Those who stayed back, they should act like Sayyid Zainab. Otherwise, you're on the camp of Yazid. So two options. Either you be like Imam Hussain if the situation is available, or you act like Sayyid Zainab. And that is the beauty of Shia Islam, where you are provided with two things. One is with a red history. What does that mean? It means when you look to the past, you see something that motivates you, that moves you. And then the other thing, you look in the future, and it's a green future, where you are promised that one day justice will prevail the earth, and you will be amongst the people who will establish justice and will receive justice. And if we look at two things, depression and anxiety. Why do you have depression? Depression happens because something happened in the past which worries you, which makes you upset. But Shia Islam provides a past, a history in which it is active to solve the issue of depression. And then the other issue is the issue of anxiety. Why do you have anxiety? Because we are worried about something in the future that's going to happen to us. Like if you're students, you're anxious about exams, assignments coming up. But Shia Islam provides us with a green future, with the promise that one day a man will come and prevail justice, and you should struggle in order to prevail justice. Now the question is how to teach and how to infuse this concept into youth, into younger generation. And I think the answer, or one of the answers, is to understand their language. That's why the verse I recited, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ. Here, lisan doesn't simply mean that we sent the Prophet and he spoke in Arabic. Here, language means he understood the needs of people. He knew what the youth need. He understood their struggles. I can talk here about different aspects of Quran, and I can talk about the proof that God exists. But I'm not going to connect with the youth, because they are living in a Western society, an Australian society, where they are struggling with different issues, different problems on a daily basis. So I will divide my speech tonight in two parts. The first part, I'll be talking about the characteristics and the features of youth of this generation. And then I will give an example from Quran how a youth, a universal youth, an ethical youth will act. So those who are born, obviously I wrote this speech for the youth because that's the English speaking background. Most of the young people are from that background. Those who are born from 1995 to 2005, they are part of what's called the Z generation, the generation Z, or I generation. Still, there is no name for those born after 2005. So, and obviously those who are born between 85 to 95, they're called the millennials. Now, why are the youth born from 1995 to 2005, they're called Generation Z? Because they carry some characteristics. And I'm going to be mentioning some of them. The first one is that they are the first digital natives, meaning this generation, when they were born into a digital environment. You don't see any young person without mobile phone, iPhone, iPad. I promise you, go around here, anyone from age of 14, 13, if not younger, they have a mobile phone, they have an iPad, they have an iPhone, they have a laptop, because they are part of digital generation. Now, when we're talking about digital generation, then that's going to change many concepts. The obvious concept, the first one, is the idea of friendship. Our fathers, our ancestors, if they wanted to make friends, they go to mosques, they go to gatherings, they see people, they make friends. But nowadays you don't make friends like that. You make friends going on Facebook. You make friends going on Twitter. You make friends going on Snapchat. And many other social medias that I don't know their names. Probably if you ask the younger group, they're more aware than me. But that's how you make friends, because they are digital natives. And obviously from here, the idea of stalking the kids, because you got to stalk each other. Now, probably some of you are going now on Facebook to see my profile, to see who this guy is. That's how you make friendship, because this is the new generation. You don't make friendships anymore by face-to-face interaction. So that's one big difference. The other difference that happens when you are in digital generation is the idea of education. You cannot teach kids anymore by giving them a book, read a book. Studies show that the attention span of kids, the Generation Z, is 8 seconds. As I'm talking now, someone from Generation Z will zone out. And then I need to bring them back. It takes them 8 seconds before they drift their attention. A goldfish has the attention span of 9 seconds, which is better than the Generation Z. So now if I want to teach someone from Generation Z, or if I want to tell them about Islamic values, it's of no point to give them a book or get them to sit down here and talk about Islam, because 8 seconds they're out. They have obviously digital generation, it takes them less than 10 minutes to again go on Facebook, refresh, to see if there are any new comments. Obviously we cannot change it. We cannot just say stop having a phone. All we can do is to come up with solutions for it. And the solution is not to stop them, because if you stop them, they go inside their room and they go on the phone again. The other thing is, when you're in digital generation, the idea of romance changes. So you don't make love anymore like by going to center, seeing someone and you make love. Love happens through messaging. Love happens through going on social media. And that's how most of the marriages happen. You get to know someone, a boy or a girl, through social media. While in the past, the boys and the girls used to know each other through the family. So the mom used to come home, and the mom tells his son that, okay, I saw a girl, she's suitable for you, let's go propose for you. But that's outdated, that's gone. Nowadays, they see each other on the social media even before you know. And that's, again, one of the consequences of digitalization and modernization of the society. So that's the first thing that we need to know to understand of Generation Z. These young people come from a digital background. So if you want to talk to them, you need to talk to them in digital language. Whether it's romance, friendship, career, education, you need to cover different aspects. The second point, the second characteristics of this generation. The concepts, many concepts and many values have changed for them. The simple thing is marriage. Another thing that, especially Australian society, we faced in the last year or two is the concept of gender. It's not anymore that simple. This generation, you want to fill a form. Before it was male, female. Now you have male, female, unspecified, transgender, will determine in the future, undetermined. So many concepts have changed. It's not anymore that simple. The concept of marriage, nowadays, no one wants to accept any commitment. You want to just be boyfriend, girlfriend for how many months, how many years, a year or two. And it's not even that. After 6 months, I want to change my boyfriend or girlfriend. Because relationship is not anymore about commitment. In the past, the shiur, used to say that half of the religion is marriage. Okay, I'm going to get married, I'm going to get half of my religion. But nowadays, relationships is not about that. It's about benefiting. I get my benefit, you get your benefit. I have some free time, you have some free time, when I spend it together. So it's not anymore that simple. The idea of marriage, that's why the age of marriage, let's say for example in Iran, which is an Islamic country, the average age of marriage is 30. So you can see how the age of marriage has increased. While in the past, 19, 20, 21, you were married. If you were a girl, probably by 18 you had 2 kids. But nowadays, because of the change in the idea of relationship, the idea of marriage, no one's getting married. And everyone's getting some sort of relationship with the opposite gender. So that's this. Obviously, there are many concepts that have changed. The concept of family has changed. The concept of work has changed. But we don't have much time, so I'll try to be as quick. So that's the second feature of this generation. If I want to talk to them, if as a parent you want to talk to them, you need to understand their language and to understand the concepts that they are facing on a daily basis. There are many points, but this will be the last point I'll be mentioning about the characteristics of the youth of this generation. And that's the concept of language. Language is not that simple. Yes, you may define language as communicating between one person to another. But language goes deeper than that. Language forms the way you look at the world. Language forms part of your behavior, your character. For example, Arabic language is a very masculine language. It's a very rough language. Now you come to English language, it's not that tough. It's a softer language. And that's why you see Arab people having normal conversation, but someone looking at them as if they're fighting with each other. Why? Because their language is very rough. Now, when you come to this generation, you see that the words have been truncated. Their letters have decreased. They're not bothered anymore to write things in full. Like for example, you see the messages XOX. That means hugs and kisses. they're not bothered anymore to write that down. And I don't know if X or X becomes triple, means something else. So it's the language of symbols, because the current generation is in rush. There is no concept of time. If you ask any young person here, how's your day been, how's your week been, they're going to say it's been so busy. And when you ask them, okay, what do you have to do? And then you see they have nothing to do except going to school, but still they feel they don't have time. Because this concept of language, where everything is truncated, has affected the understanding of time. Like, if you want to say love you forever in a message, they say L-U-V, you, forever. All the letters have decreased. And that's why the spelling ability is not that great, because no word has been spelled the right way. Everything is about shortening. Like if you want to say, I don't know, definitely you say defs. You want to say, like you say YOLO, which means you only live once. If you want to say someone's cute, you say QT. So all of these are signifying something deeper. What they signify, number one, the concept of time is so different. They're running out of time. And that's why you see they always stress, they're anxious. They always want to be withdrawn. They want to be inside the room. They want to be on the laptop. They want to be on their phone. Why? Because they have this anxiety. And that's why number one cause for death for young people between 15 to 30 is suicide. It's not diabetes, it's not a stroke, it's not heart attack, it's suicide. Committing suicide. 1 out of 3 in Australia suffers from depression. And that's one of the reasons, because when you're always anxious, when you're always running out of time, and this is the result of obviously the transition in the context of the language. So we mentioned 3 things about this generation. Obviously there are more that we can talk about their behavior, about their aspirations. Which I just have another 5 minutes. So we talked about the digital natives. We said that this generation, everything is digitalized. The second, we talk about many concepts and values have been redefined and have changed. And the third is the language, the use of the language, the words, the expressions. Now I would like to provide one example for our young brothers and sisters from Quran, how a young person should be in terms of their characteristics, in terms of their behavior, in terms of their aspirations, in terms of their language. And I think the best example in Quran is Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, as a young person, how he acted. And his behavior, his traits are universal. We can apply it at any time, at any place, at any age. So I'll mention 5 characters. Obviously we don't have time, so probably 2 characters. Number 1, this young man, Prophet Ibrahim, was a man of rationality and logic. What probably most of us lack. When he was a young man, not sure how, 15, 16, he came to his dad, either his dad, uncle, trainer, it's not important, but someone had a fatherly role. And he told him, إذ قال لأبيه وقومه ما هذه التماثيل التي أنتم لها عاكفون. When he told his dad or his trainer or his uncle, what are these images, what are these idols that you worship and you prostrate for them? قالوا وجدنا آباءنا لها عابدين. His dad answered that we found our forefathers, our ancestors, worshipping them. Look how smart Ibrahim is. He said that قال لقد كنتم وآباؤكم في ضلال مبين. He said that even if your dad did not think and ponder and reflect, would you follow them? Would you take their footsteps? Just the fact that my dad and my mom and my uncle and my family and my community did that, does that make it right? So Ibrahim said that this doesn't make sense. Yes, my father and my forefathers did it, but that doesn't qualify something to be right. So he did not accept that. He did his own research. What our young people need to do, this is the age of technology. You need anything, just go on Google and type it. You are a scholar by yourself. You have a library in your phone. What we lack here is reading books. This generation is the generation of reading comments. Their knowledge, if you ask them, where'd you get it from? Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram. Any other new modality? I'm not sure, probably there are more out there. But this generation is a generation of reading comments, taking pictures, taking selfies. Everything's for the moment. Who cares about the future? Who cares what happens? Just the moment. I'll mention this last one and then I'll conclude. Ibrahim, another character he presented this youth was he was family oriented. He was concerned about family, brothers, sisters, his wife, his community, his people. He was not a selfish man. He was a family oriented person. And that's why he always used to connect with his sons, Ishaq, Ismail, and trying to build their future. There was a survey, they asked young people, what do you think make you happy? Number one that they mentioned was wealth. They said, money will make my life happier. And number two, they said fame. If I become famous, then I'll be a happy person. But I would like to conclude with this study which was done at Harvard University. At Harvard University, they did a 75-year study. It was called What Makes a Good Life. The title of the study was What Makes a Good Life. For 75 years, they followed up more than 800 people. Asked them questions every 2 years. Follow their lives, see how they are, how their career, their occupation, their family relationship. For 75 years. And the question they wanted to answer was, what makes a good life? How can you have a happy life? What do you think was the answer after 75 years? The answer to what makes a good life. What do you think is the answer? We're all living creatures. We're all Muslims. What do you think is the answer to having a good life? Religion? Any other answers? What makes a happy life? How do you have a happy life?
Money.
Money, that's another answer.
Yes.
Your
wife.
Some good answers. I'm sure it's not wise, but I don't know. So the answer they found after 75 years of research, to have a good life, to have a happy life, the answer is to have a good relationship. As simple as that. If you have a good relationship, it makes you healthier, it makes you live longer, it makes your brain work better. So what matters is to have a good relationship. Relationship with your wife, with your husband, with your kids, between the siblings. 75 years of study is one of the longest studies they've done. What makes a good life, what makes a happy life, is a good relationship. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have 200,000 followers on Instagram and you get 200,000 likes on Facebook. It's not about the number, it's about the quality. So if you have good relationships with quality, it's good protective. They found that they're protective for your health. You live longer. Even if your diabetes is not managed, and obviously all the Arabs have diabetes, blood pressure, cholesterol, that's the triad, all the Arabs have it. Even if this triad and you don't exercise, we all have Kerish. So that's well known, even if that's not, you don't exercise, these are not managed. But if you have good relationship, quality time between community members, siblings, brothers, sisters, friends, That makes you a healthier person. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.
بارك الله فيك. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. كلمة المتحدث باسم جمعية السلام الحاج أبو جعفر الطفيلي، نستقبله بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
الرحيم.